All right, well, welcome DT to our second ever version of the South Report. This has been going on for a few years now, but it's a big gap between our first ever interview with the famous, the living legend, Johnny Wallace. And I was sitting with my kids, as you know, the other night, and I said, who should be number two? I want to revitalise the interview for our 125. And all four of my kids said Dan Trollope. So here we are. We're in our little recording studio. So I guess the first question, DT, where did it all start? Where did you grow up? Tell us a bit about your family life.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Lismore, born in Lismore Base Hospital. Um, Family of four. I think I have my brother, my mum and dad. Um, Went to local primary school down there, Lismore Heights first, and then Lismore Public because it was closer for us to walk to dad's work after school, so he didn't have to come and get us. And I remember roughly, I think it was around year three or year four, my family had a discussion about sending us possibly to Woodlawn, which is it's now co-ed private school down that way, but it was only boys only at the time. So it was either Woodlawn or TSS, and I don't know what pulled the trigger for either, but fortunately we landed here at TSS. So I came first as a year six boarder in '94, and in those days were the preppies in the, well, we called it the dungeon, but the very bottom of what's now Roger's kitchen. Um, and yeah, that was year six in there. And then '95 was the first year of Roger's house. So we moved over to where the Centenary Centre is now because that was the old prep school site. We were there for the year. And then my brother came in '97 as a year seven boarder. I think that was the second year of being down in the old prep school before they made the transition over to where they are now.
So we're going to talk a fair bit about TSS. For those that don't know, Dan's an old boy of TSS like myself. Before we do, Lismore, it's a town that's had to face a lot of challenges, flooding. Did you experience any flooding as a kid?
Um, Certainly, we were in town. Also, we were living in Lismore when the floods were on. However, we were fortunate that we were up in Lismore Heights, so we're up on the hill. However, Dad's business, we were in the service station game. So originally we had two, and there was one that was in town, not far from the Lismore Square, that would always go under. And Dad ended up selling that one, and we just had the one in East Lismore. And East Lismore was fortunate that it never really got touched. Like the water, there was certainly the 1974 flood. There was a marker on the power pole at the front of our servo, but any of the floods between then and more recently, it was like 2022 or 2018, the last big flood that was down there, East Lismore got wiped out. And when I say wiped out, it went to the awnings of our service station, which were quite high because we had trucks coming in for diesel. So yeah, it was quite amazing that East Lismore got whacked as hard as it did, which means obviously Lismore itself, and more importantly South Lismore, um, got really, really punished with the water out there. So that, I think, that certainly was the final straw for my family to get out, essentially. So Dad was commuting after my accident, which I'm sure we'll get to, but Dad was commuting between the Gold Coast and Lismore. And he was doing that, so he was having a 4-day weekend and just work in the middle of the week and staying down there. But yeah, after that flood and putting the service station back together, fortunately by then Dad had leased off the fuel side of it, and he was just the mechanic in the workshop. But yeah, the owner of the fuel side that came and just said to Dad, "Look, are you looking to sell?" And he said, "Yep." And we were out, thankfully. So
Probably wishes he was in the field game right at the moment, the way fuel prices are. But just on that, those videos and photos your dad sent, the Lismore when it last got hit, it was just, you said it got smashed. It was a war zone. It was just brutal. So, as I said, the town's faced a lot of challenges over the years, and I know your family's been stuck in the middle of it. So, Dad was a mechanic. What did Mum do?
Mum worked, she was in the hospitality game. So she was a chef by trade. And growing up, I remember my mum working at the RSL. I forget what that stands for, but Return Services League.
Well,
So she worked for Lismore RSL, which was in town, and then she went up to Gunnellabar. So yeah, so mum was a chef, and then she left there and she went and worked for the university and was in charge of their. They had a big conference and events centre on top of, sort of like the back of Gunnellabar. So it did weddings and all sorts of things, but it also had like 35 self-contained units. So yeah, she was working with the university for, I think it was like a good 10 or 15 years. And yeah, 2001 when I had my accident, I was fortunate. Mum and dad just said, look, my life was up here on the Gold Coast and all my mates and everything else. So essentially, my mum packed up her life and they moved up here. We bought management rights. And yeah, dad did the commute between Lismore and the coast for me to stay here.
It's a pretty typical story. It's funny from the outside looking in, everyone just assumes families here have a lot of wealth and they can afford the fees, but large percentage of our families are just working class and work so hard just to give their kids, like your brother and my brother and I and you, a better lifestyle opportunities they didn't have. So let's get to that then. So big investment, working class family, worked really hard to make the decision to send you. Thank God you didn't go to Woodlawn. You came to, no offense to Woodlawn listeners, but yeah, TSS has got a lot to offer. Tell us about your TSS experience. Well, actually, I'll take that back. What was your best memory of TSS? What's the best day you ever had here?
Wow, best day I've ever had here.
As a student, not as a staff member.
Yeah. Probably the best day I had here was my grandfather. He always said that if my brother and I got a rep blazer, he would buy it for us. So Ben and I played in the first 15 together in 2000, and I can still see my grandfather handing over his credit card to pay for those 2 rep blazers. So that's obviously the most favourite part. But the second part to that is when he was still alive, he would often wear my blazer as his dressing gown at home.
Wow.
So yeah, my grandfather, I mean, he was a boilermaker. He had
What was
it
his
pretty
name?
tough. Ken Howard.
Ken.
But yeah, he loved this place more than me, I think. And I do. I love this place, but it was his job to come and get my brother and I at the end of school each term. He'd drive up from Lennox Head, pick us up, take us home. Would stop at the McDonald's at Reedy Creek, and he was. I think that's the whole reason why he came up, because he never went to McDonald's any other time, but he always had a soft serve cone and an apple pie, and he was happy as Larry. But yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good things here in terms of being a boarder. Not that there's anything wrong with day boys, but you couldn't pay me to be a day boy. Living with 20 of your best mates that you have for the rest of your life is pretty cool. Not to say that day boys don't have that with their experience, but yeah, I whether it's being in the boarding house or things are a bit different now with the dining hall, but eating with your mates at dinner in the dining hall and then playing sport on the weekend. I was fortunate that my folks put up with bad report cards so I could play sport and hang out with my mates and everything else. So
you and your brother were both sporty. So you said first 15 you rowed as well, both of you, or just you?
Just me. Yeah. So when I first came here, I was a swimmer and I did swimming in year 8. And obviously when you're fresh to a new school, you want to do everything. But I did swimming. I did enjoy it, but I thought it wasn't really for me. And I also did cross country, and I ran at Limestone Park, and I swore that I'd never ever run that course again. So I'd always make sure I was like 21 to 25, just outside of that top 20 barrier that I'd take to GPS in the day. But yeah, so I turned my hand to rowing with Mr. Doran at the time, was the director of rowing. He started a program at the prep school, the Ergos. So didn't have to worry about trying to balance the scull. You could just get on an ergo and pull the hell out of it. And that's what I did, and managed to get some pretty good scores at the time. But and it was a reasonable balance. So you're rowing in the summer and just focus on rugby in the winter, and then a bit of track and field at the end of the year.
Bit of track and field. You're pretty humble. We'll get to that in a moment, post-school. So you rowed, a little bit of rugby. You saw the head of the river on the weekend.
Yeah.
Our rowing's come a long way. So for those that don't know, I was a few years ahead of Dan at school. rowing in the 90s, very different to rowing in the 2020s.
Very much so. Like the shed, and you look at our shed now, and it's probably, if it's not twice the size, it's 3 times the size. And the amount of boats and the quality of the boats that we have down there now make the old Ted Hale and what else did I used to row in? Ted Hale and Sykes rowing boats, or just those big heavy timber boats. Although we had like the blades that the guys have now, but you pick up. I saw footage on our social media of our head coach Cameron Kennedy. He was carrying all 8 sets of blades on his shoulders, walking the boat down. I must admit, when I saw that, I thought, "There's no way you're doing that with the blades in our day." So, yeah, technology's certainly come a long way.
Yeah, that's the rowing program. So school, like most of us, actually before we get to that, your brother was a pretty good athlete from memory.
Ben, fortunately for him, he had the gift of everything. He's still the golden child in our family, but he was a sportsman and academically smart, and has gone on and done and doing great things. But yeah, he was a sprinter or runner, short distance more so than long, and he was certainly punched well above his weight in terms of being in the weights room with Barry Vaness. Barry, when we still see him, he still talks about the fact that Ben was deadlifting and squatting stupid amount of weights at the time. But I still remember in my year 12, so that was 2000, him lining up against Herman Hunt. Herman Hunt used to be a winger in those days, not that you'd know that now, but
big unit.
He was a big unit back then as well. And Ben was all of 65 kilos ringing wet, but he still brought him down. So, yeah.
So all of us have dreams and ambitions. What was the dream for you when you finally graduated from TSS? You think back to your days and they felt so long, and then you think of you're looking back though, literally your time at TSS, regardless of how many years you're here, just seems to fly by. So you walk out of here, you graduate, you do the war cry. What was the dream for Dan Trollope?
The long-term dream was join the police force. Short-term was while I was in year 12, I found a course at TAFE that gave me a diploma in hospitality and then a dive instructor certification. So the title of it was Diploma of Hospitality, Dive Resort Management. So it was pretty cool. I was doing 4 days of TAFE a week, and that was learning everything, all facets of hotel, whether it's back of house to front of house, including the kitchen. And once a week with the course, you would do a day of diving, and then I had 24 people in my year group or my class, and we were diving on weekends or as much as we could, so around work and whatnot. But eventually, that was an 18-month course, and the plan was to go and travel, work in a hotel, or teach people to dive. And I wanted to use that dive certification as like a backdoor pass into the water police. But in saying that, my eyes sort of opened up to commercial diving. So that was there, but definitely a long-term game was always going to be the police force. Yeah.
So you said your brother was the golden child of the family, but you doesn't have a diploma in hospitality, hey? You said he had the smarts and had the physical finesse.
No.
Let's sell yourself short.
Well, yeah, fortunately I got a ticket out of it, but yeah, he went to uni.
Yeah.
He went to uni and did exercise science. It's funny though, you go to uni or you think you're going to do what you're going to do, and things change. So he's in a completely different field now, and doing great things, running into old boys and stuff out in the country all the time.
Yeah, we'll talk about the drone stuff that you guys got into. So you take up diving, it was a real passion of yours. I remember Jared Murtagh, probably a little bit, probably between you and I think, as an old boy, he lost his father at school. And I remember he said life's got just a way of punching you in the face sometimes. That's the way he put it. So life's throwing you a couple of curveballs. Let's talk about the diving accident. Now, you talk about wherever you want to, how far you want to go. Obviously, we've got listeners here that are aware Dan had an accident with diving. Some people listening may never have met you either. So, I guess, the day, the incident, how it came about.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's the full in-depth story, it's a long story, but and I've got no problem talking about it if people were to pull me up on it outside of listening to this. But yeah, so it was just a regular dive on a Thursday. That particular morning, or I worked that night, got to bed late because I was working, and I was carpooling with some mates from the course on that Thursday morning. And in those days, I was renting the unit that my parents had in Surfers, that we had while we were at school, and they were buzzing. They were downstairs and they were buzzing the unit, and it was like the fourth or fifth buzz that woke me up. Like I'd slept through my alarms. So the day had already started in not so much a panic, but I was just disorganized. So, yeah, I got my stuff together that wasn't organized, but I quickly sorted that, got downstairs, jumped in the car with the two guys I was going down with, and we're diving out of the TAFE had hired a company out of Tweed Heads at the time to be the dive organisation part of the course. So we got to the dive centre and then put our gear on the bus, went to the boat, and we're diving off a ribbed inflatable for out of Tweed Heads.
So when you say we, this is the group that you're at
Yeah,
doing the course with.
yeah. So the group. So we'll split. It was a group of 24 guys and girls, and we'll split into two groups of 12 because you only have a smaller group when you dive. So yeah, we were Group A, they were Group B. So yeah, all of Group A met down at the dive centre on this Thursday morning. We went out, got on the boat, and we're diving at a place called the Pinnacles, which is straight out from Kingscliff. I think it's like two nautical miles straight out. And it's just a rock formation. The top of the rock formation starts at 18 metres and the seabed's at 20. So it's a perfect spot for any open water or advanced open water divers because they're your limits that you can go to. So we're only at 24 metres, just swimming or diving around this rock formation. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a crappy day in terms of visibility. It's cloudy. There's a cloudy sky, so you didn't have much sunlight. But it was just a dive that we're adding to our log dives that we needed to become dive instructors. So yeah, we did the dive and we'd reached the amount of time we're staying down as per the dive plan. Came back to the anchor line, started coming back up. I was the third person on the line, so we had the dive company's dive instructor and dive master, and then the 12 students. So yeah, I was the first of the students coming back up. My dive computer at the time, it cost me an absolute fortune. It had all the bells and whistles, and I figured if I'm going to cut a corner, I'm not going to cut a corner on that. So no alarms went off as I was coming up. And I remember we did a safety stop at 5 meters. I remember getting to the safety stop and I just felt like I'd been drinking for 2 or 3 weeks. And also felt like someone hit me in the back with a baseball bat. Like I had really, really bad pain, no power in my legs. And I can remember my dive instructor and dive master looking at me, giving me the okay sign. And I was just shaking my head and blowing bubbles like I wanted to get out of there. And they wrote on the dive slate, no, we've got to stay, we've got to do our time. So technically we were supposed to be there for 5 minutes, or that was the plan. But after 4 minutes, they allowed me to go back up to the surface. And at that 5 meter level, there was a current running. So because I had no power in my legs, I was holding onto the line with my arms. So by the time I got to the surface, I can still remember getting to the surface and just feeling relieved I was out of depth of water. Blew up my BCD, and I had a loose grip on one of the rope loops on the ribbed inflatable. And my dive buddy, who I still see today, he owns a restaurant out in Nerang, an Italian restaurant. But Aaron, he jumped in the boat. He then leant over the boat, and I didn't have any strength in my arms to undo the buckles on my BCD. So he did that and took my BCD off. But your BCD is also your inflatable device. So when he turned around to rack my gear, he turned back around and I was gone. I'd sunk back into the water. So they dived in after me, hadn't gone that far down, pulled me back up, put me in the boat. I can still remember the boat ride. So I could hear the engines running. I could hear Aaron and feeling him hitting my face. Asked me to open my eyes. I just couldn't. And we went from the Pinnacle straight back into Tweed Heads to, they'd organised an ambulance. Anyway, we got to the jetty and it was just like I woke up and I was like, what's going on? Like, there's nothing wrong. And the dive company said, no, you're going to go to the hospital. And I thought, okay, so stepped out of the boat, stood up on my own. So everything came back. So all my feeling, all my movement, stood up in the boat, took my one piece wetsuit off. And that particular day, I was wearing a pair of board shorts. So might mean nothing now, but it comes into play a bit later on. But so I got up, walked off the boat, walked on along the jetty, got onto the ambulance bed. They told me to lay down, answered all their questions. They took me up to the ambulance, and then they thought, oh, we'll take him to Tweed Heads. Don't know what to do with him. And we went there, and unfortunately, we just triaged incorrectly. Went from being a diving accident to a surfing accident. Whole comedy of errors. Unfortunately, helicopters weren't available because one was having a service, one was out on a job. Transfer up to Brisbane to the Wesley was ordered incorrectly. So, long story short, I presented at Tweed Heads Hospital at 11:04 on the 14th of June 2001, and then I didn't get to the Wesley in Brisbane, where the hyperbaric chamber is, until 5:45 that night. My folks were informed at the time of the incident, and they said, "Oh, he's just going to hospital for a checkup." And in those days, mobile coverage wasn't what it is now. So mum and dad went about their day's work, finished work, went back home. And in those days, we'd moved from Lismore to Lennox Head because my grandmother had died and my grandfather wanted to go out to our farm at Tamworth. So we're living at Lennox. And so they stopped there, grabbed the bags, some clothes, and they thought they knew they had to come to Brisbane, but they thought they'd stay in Surface before going back to work the next day. So I remember mum telling me that they got up to Tweed Heads and that's where mobile service kicked in again. And when they got there, they called the Wesley to see if I had arrived, and I had just arrived. And mum said, "So what's going on? Like, we've just been told he went to hospital for a checkup." And they said, "Oh no, he's in a serious situation. Like, he's got paralysis from the chest down." And my dive doctor, guy by the name of Dr. Stephen Mitchell, Professor Stephen Mitchell, one of the two. He's on a current Netflix documentary about diving, actually. Yeah, he actually said to my mum and dad, "We're surprised. You're lucky that Dan's still alive, because not only did I have that pain in my back, I didn't realise what it was at the time, but I never suffered, and I don't suffer, thankfully, from migraines. And I've seen people that do suffer from them, and they look incredibly uncomfortable. But the headache or the pain I had in my head that day was a headache that was on steroids. It was amazing. And little did I know it was actual nitrogen bubbles passing through the vessels in my head. Unfortunately, because I was left off oxygen, that bubble in my spinal cord swelled up and cut the circulation to my legs, which caused the paralysis. But yeah, so I spent 18 days in the Wesley, and then they couldn't do any more for me there. And that's when I headed over to the PA spinal unit. So I was 18 at the time, and when I got there, unbeknownst to me, because it hadn't being an 18-year-old, I wasn't really watching the news, but there was a young terrace boy there at the time, a guy by the name of Nick Hanley, whose dad went on to be Nudgee headmaster for 10, 15 years. Yeah. So myself, Nick, who was 17, he had a rugby accident, and there was another kid in there by the name of Aaron who broke his neck, and he was 14. So there's a bit of a running joke that they had all the teenagers in a pod together. And yeah, we ran amok in the spinal unit I was in there for 3 months. Nick was in there for a bit shorter than me, and Aaron was shorter again. So
you jumped a couple of things there. The board shorts, at that point, you're standing.
Yeah.
You're walking into the hospital, you present as a surfer. So at what point are you laid back down again?
Oh no, I I was told to lay down at the jetty, and I didn't stand back up again. And but I think the mistake was made because I was wearing board shorts. In the handover, it went from being a scuba diving accident to a surfing accident.
And so the bubbles are in your spine. At what point in all those, so that from that day in June, you're taken up to the Wesley? What's the day that a doctor comes in and says there's paralysis here and it could be permanent?
Um, I certainly remember a discussion because I kept on asking when will the feeling and the sensation, because I went, like I said, I went from having everything to being paralyzed. After an hour and a half at Tweed Heads, I went from having everything to nothing. So I kept on, every time I saw the doctor, I said, when's this coming back? And he didn't have an answer. Because at the time he hadn't seen, there was only, to my memory, there was only one other person that's been in this position, and they had 3 hyperbaric chamber visits, and I had 18. So, yeah, after 18 trips to the decompression chamber, and they said, look, we're going to send you over to the spinal unit, that's when the penny sort of dropped that this could be a permanent thing. But for me, mentally, in my head, it wasn't until that year anniversary where I thought I've just got to get on with being a paraplegic in a wheelchair, because I mean I was obviously heavily involved in sport. So that first year of my incident, I didn't pick up any sport or anything like that because I thought, oh, I'll be right next week, back to normal. But yeah, that basically the line in the sand was that first year anniversary that just got to get on with it now because it's not going to change.
So 3 teenagers running amok in the pod are now 30, 40 plus year old men. Do you stay in touch?
I don't stay in touch with Aaron. I think Nick does, but yet definitely still in touch with Nick. He went on to be a lawyer with the DPP in Brisbane.
Okay.
As I said, his dad didn't. Well, one could argue that being nudgy, they'd never do anything incredible, but I think Darryl Hanley left a pretty significant legacy in the way that he built Nudgy up to what it is now, and they've gone on with that. I'm pretty sure Darryl might have been there when Alex broke his neck, possibly, or just
finished. So Darryl ended up getting an extension, which is really unusual in the Catholic system. And Peter Fulliger had taken over at that time. So Peter was actually with young Alex. And there was a time when we had a few neck injuries across the GPS. So you did get on with life. You got straight into sport. You've got the Southern Cross on the bicep there. So you've made a full recovery. At what point do you say, right, next step, I'm competing?
Yeah, so basically you had to find a sport. So we've got an organisation in Queensland called Sporting Wheelies. So yeah, I went to them and just said, what's available, what's out there. And they used to have like come and try days and things like that. Nothing like, they weren't as organised as what they are now. Yeah. But essentially I got given a A5 booklet, and it was honestly the A to Z of sport for people with disabilities. And they said, look, just have a look through that, just pick something out that you like the sound of, and we'll make it work.
What'd you pick?
Well, there were quite a few. I wanted to play rugby, obviously, but I'm too able for rugby because that's a sport reserved for people that have a disability in all 4 limbs. But so the next violent or bash and crash sport is basketball. But in those days, we didn't have the rollerblades that we got on the Gold Coast. So you'd have to go to Brisbane. Right. So that cancelled that out. And you also got to remember that to get into disabled sport, you don't do it in the chair that you're in. You do it in a completely different chair. So it's not like going down to Rebel Sport and buying $110 or $200 pair of footy boots and going in to play soccer and you need moulded. So I kept kicking stones and trying to find something. Then I came across wheelchair. I remember seeing wheelchair racing here on the Gold Coast for the Gold Coast Marathon. There's a wheelie section. And Kurt Fernley was there. Lou Savage was still racing at the time. A guy by the name, I didn't know these people at the time, but I ended up racing with them. But another guy, Richard Nicholson. So I just saw this bunch of guys and girls racing down the road, and they're hurtling down the road pretty quick. And I thought, this isn't too bad because they're jockeying for position. It's just like the Tour de France, but in wheelchairs. So the only problem is it's for 42 kilometres. And I thought, well, this doesn't look too bad. So I looked into it, went up to the Runaway Bay track, and there was a guy up there by the name of Adam Shepherd. He had a racing chair. He said, "I'll just jump in mine." And I think that's the beauty of people with a disability, that they're just happy to let you use their equipment because they know what you're looking down the barrel of if you decide you want to get into it. So you want to make the decision right the first time. So yeah, I had to go around the track, and I got a little bit of speed up, nothing crazy, but I thought, yeah, I could make something of this. And then I remember getting out and saying to him, because we didn't have anything like NDIS or anything like that back then. And I said to him, "So what's one of these worth?" And he said, "Oh, well, that one there is about $6,500–7,000." I'm like, "Holy smokes!" And I thought, "Wow, this is going to be a massive ask." Because at the end of the day, my parents were still had Ben here at school, and everything else that was going on at home. Mum was up here, Dad was working between both. So I don't know if you remember the lady Judy Cronk. Remember Judy Cronk that used to look after? She was a swimming administrator. Yeah. South African lady, really, really beautiful lady. Yeah. So she got wind. I don't know how she got wind of me wanting to do wheelchair racing, but I remember her getting wind of what the cost of the wheelchair was, and she thought that was crazy. But she was determined to buy me a wheelchair. Yeah, wow. So I remember her doing a fundraiser here at TSS, unbeknownst to me at the time, because I would have been highly embarrassed. And there was a family that owned a McDonald's, and I can't think of their name right now, but they helped chip in, and that's what the TSS community does. When someone needs something, someone unbeknownst to the person that's in trouble will put a call out, and just a groundswell of people will chip in and help. And yeah, Judy asked me to come to the pool, and it was at the 25-meter pool. It wasn't set. We didn't have the fences and stuff that we've got now, but she had a barbecue going on. It was after one of their swimming lessons. Anyway, she called me, like, we're having a barbecue, and she called me forward, and my mum and dad were there, and she just said, "Oh, we heard you wanted to get into wheelchair racing. Need to buy a chair. We've raised this money," and she gave me a check for $5,500, which was amazing. Like, I could have fallen out of my chair then and there, but yeah, so that was the start. That was my very first wheelchair, was thanks to TSS. And yeah, it fortunately, once I got my own chair, because you're always nervous whether you're going to actually like it, but yeah, fortunately I got my own chair that fitted properly and everything else. And yeah, just went on and did anything from 100 meters up to 42 kilometers. So yeah, it was enjoyable. Met some great people along the way.
Represented Australia, got to Australian level.
Yeah, so I went over to the FESPIC Games in Kuala Lumpur, which was interesting. I think that was my first, I think, international trip being in a wheelchair. So obviously completely foreign to me. How you get on a plane, what you do on a plane, how you get off. And again, it's not until you're forced into an uncomfortable situation that you just got to learn these things. But again, going back to people with a disability, the place you learn is by watching other people, and other people in your position giving you the tips. Because I remember speaking to some physios and OTs before I went, and everything they said was completely wrong. Yeah. Only because sure, they might have read it or learnt it at university, but it wasn't practical for what you needed to do in the situation. So I went to Kuala Lumpur, and then after that, I think that was the taste of what else was out there. So I used to go over to America and race on what's known as the America Series, where we'd race in New York, Atlanta, a place called Cedartown, which is just outside of Atlanta, and that was a training camp. And there was a couple of other places in the States, but it was basically a 4-week circuit every year that you would race in our winter, which was great to get us away from the cold and stay racing and doing training in our supposed downtime, ready for the summer.
So we'll get on to your current role and how the lessons you've learned have made you very, very good at what you're doing, risk and compliance. But before we get to that, two parts, TSS life and then as an athlete, two people that have had a big impact on you in those two environments when you were here at school, who had an impact on you, an influence on you. And then as an athlete, you learn by doing and you learn from others. Who are two people you've learned from? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah. So athlete wise, I think if anyone was to have a look at Kurt Fernley and what he did, even like I said before, Richard Nicholson, he was an interesting case in that he was a massive unit. Like I don't think I've ever seen biceps as big as this guy. Like he had, when I talk about the size of a bicep, he has Bob Marley on his. Is this the delt?
Yeah, deltoid.
Deltoid. Yeah. So Bob Marley's head
Bob
is
Marley.
A full-size. Yeah. So Richo was actually he used to do gymnastics, and I'm pretty sure he was born with polio.
Okay.
And he used to get marked down on his dismount because he would land on the ground on his knees. Yeah. So he got miffed with that. So that's what caused him to come over to disabled sport. He took up powerlifting. So I think he was 75 kilos and he got a silver medal in Sydney. And I think he benched something like 190 kilos. Don't quote me on it, but it's definitely, if you did a Google search, you would find it. So the guy was just a machine and then put that into a wheelchair and he could move a chair. So yeah, watching those guys back in the day just applying their craft to what they're doing. And back then, the guys and girls that were doing wheelchair racing, like they weren't getting any coverage, they weren't getting sponsors, they weren't getting what we've got now, but they're doing it for the love of it and giving them a purpose of getting up in the morning. So, if I was put on the spot, which I have been, there are two that come to mind. And then what was the first?
TSS. Who had a big impact on you during your schooling years?
I think I'm the same as any kid that comes here. When you join the prep school, you come over, and being a boarder, we had to get out of the boarding house. So you're sent to the first 15 rugby. But you sit there and you just watch these guys they look like gladiators because they're so big in these red, white, and blue jerseys. And they were a true jersey back then, as you all know. When they got wet, they were heavy as all buggery. But I mean, I still remember you running around with Sharpie.
It's not set up, by the way.
Yeah. But the guy, and even a guy by the name of Timo Sattler, who I had in my house in Biddle, Marius Lowe. Yeah. You just Tim Frogley, far out, they're all coming back to me now.
There you go.
But so you have essentially you're looking at what you want to be in the future. Yeah, when I got here and I saw the rugby, I never played rugby as a kid. Yeah. Like I played for the Lismore Thistles playing soccer down on College Street in Lismore, and I think they still play there. I know Joe has taken some of our boys down there to play trial games against them, which was bizarre the first time we did that. It was like a walk back in time. But and then you also have the people around you. So Mitch Campbell, he was a kid from Grafton, came to the school here, and to see he wasn't the tallest kid in the world, but the amount of power that he could produce and move a boat was just amazing.
Good raw.
And then you paired him with the likes of Dave Smith, who was again another guy in the house in Biddle House with me. You just see, or you'd like to think you see yourself in all these people that are older than you, and you'd like to think, well, I hope I can do that when I get to grade 10 or grade 11.
Can't see it, you can't be it.
Yeah.
So, a couple of names there. One of the boys you said was short, nuggety, strong as an ox. How tall are you? People don't realise this. I'm 6'3", and you were taller than me.
Yeah, 6'4", 6'4". So I've actually got a standing frame. So you would have seen both standing frames.
Yeah.
So I've got one of those at home. So when I stand up, I forget like how tall I am. So when you pump that, so it's a device that you pump it with your right hand, and it's got um it's got like a what's the word? It's got like a shock absorber, hydraulic lift. Yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for. Like a hydraulic lift that pushes your seat up and just straightens you out, and it's really good for our bones.
Yes.
But yeah, you forget how tall you are. And even Hole, my wife, she's 5'11", and I've got it outside, and she comes around the corner, and she goes, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
So
You just
forget.
Same as Perry. They're both really tall guys. So
Yeah,
we'll get to Holly. Yeah, don't get ahead of me too far because I don't want to miss a couple of things. But I remember vividly you and I were helping out with rowing, and a mum, quite a short mum, was kind of standing. She was really upset. She was standing over you. I remember that day so vividly, thinking, far out, if you stood up out of that chair right now, you'd be absolutely towering over us. So
yeah, mind you, she still would have been giving it to me, just
she
looking
would
up.
looking up, really good for the double chin.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to Holly in a moment, but the risk and compliance role, you just look at through your job with a completely different lens. You've seen the best and worst in life. You've seen when things go wrong, Murphy's Law kicks in. From the second that incident occurs, there was phone calls not made in time. There was triage not happening. There was days with it, had things gone potentially better and some more smoothly, the outcome may not have been as irreversible or permanent, potentially. What did you learn that then has helped you in your current role? For those that don't know that are listening, Dan looks after all our risk and compliance in sport. What could possibly go wrong with 1,400, we've got 1,700 students, of which probably 1,400 play sport throughout the year on Saturdays in various, whether it's on the water, off the water, rugby. What did you learn about risk and compliance that has made you so good at your job?
I think the best way I can describe it is throwing a rock in a pond. So when that rock initially makes that initial splash, for me, that's one of our kids that is hurt, and then the ripples that come after that is just like the layers of an onion. So it'll be immediately the student's family, like mom and dad, and then siblings, cousins, friends. It just keeps going out, and the biggest thing is the ripples will keep going, but sometimes we think about the ripples and we not that we forget about the initial splash, but the initial splash happens so far earlier that we're out here, we're thinking about out here. So it's firstly, it's just making sure that the family has and the student has what they need to make sure that they're okay. And then the second to that is just a follow up to ensure that they're getting everything. And unfortunately, we've got our compliance manager, Dave Farrell, who's really good in that. He makes a lot of the connection with the families to look after insurance paperwork and things like that. But for that to happen, all the paperwork from our side has to be up to date and within hands reach or arm's reach of Dave to say, yep, this is everything that we've got, and this is what you'll need. So for me, with my experience with what I went through, at least not that I think I'm doing everything 100% correct all the time, but I definitely make sure that everything I can think of is done. So when it's asked for, I'm not having to chase something up. So
Such a good analogy. Pebble in the pond, and you're so good at always coming back to the pebble, and you're so right as the ripples push out family, school, wider picture, GPS, you always come back. And I look at examples like Bowl, or if we've had a boy have an incident, we've had Jack McLeish become a lower leg amputee, you've always focused on the rock, on the pebble, and the family, the inner circle, and that's your experience has led you to that. And don't sell yourself short. You're amazing at that, and making sure that we always come back to ensuring things are going to happen, but making sure it's as safe as it can possibly be, and you hold people to account, which is amazing. you come to TSS, you get a job here, you've worked a few different jobs, but your current one, you're just smashing. You meet Holly. Tell us about that.
So wow. So I actually met Hole. I guess the first time I saw Hole, I was watching Being an Old Boy. I was up on Old Boys Hill. I was with my brother. He'd finished PT in the morning, and we met. And in those days, the pavilion wasn't there, obviously. So I was sitting up there with some of the boys in the big electric chair that I had, and I just saw this person running around in hot pink Canterbury's with the halftime prep boys, reception boys playing the halftime entertainment. And I just said to my brother, "Who's that?" He goes, "Oh, that's Holly." I'm like, what do you mean that's Holly?
How did he know who she was?
Well, Ben was actually Hol's personal trainer at the gym. I'm going, "Oh, so you know her?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've been personally training her for a while." I'm going, "Okay." Anyway, she was training to do a marathon, and I was doing road racing, and would go out and do some training runs together and things like that. And long and the short of it, things just kept moving along. And then she was obviously coaching rugby at the prep school, and I was coaching rugby in the prep school, but I think I was doing year 5 or year 6 at the time. So I started coaching rugby back here in 2003, I think, after my accident. And I was enjoying coaching. And then I met Hole, and Hole said, "Oh, do you want to coach together?" So we did, and we coached the 6As for quite a while, for a number of years together. Um, and then Hole became a teacher aide over at prep school. And then I ended up coming over to the senior school. So I remember going to Haney and just saying, "Look, are there any roles happening in the senior school that I could just put my hand up for and volunteer?" And I remember Brian saying, "Oh, I don't really think there is at the moment, but come along to the directors' meeting and we'll put it out there." So we did that. And Dave Claxton jumped on me straight away because Clacker loved doing what he did on the basketball court and he was great at it, but he hated a computer.
Not so good at the admin.
Hated a computer. So, yes, and then things just kept falling into place, fortunately, after that.
So it's the manager roles, camps, then a bit of risk and compliance.
Yeah, so in-house travel agent for domestic tours only. And then picked up, I did some work with Wall, and Brian wanted me to come back into rugby, so look or help assist those guys with their medical on Saturday and the concussion tracking and making sure all that paperwork's together. But because that's becoming a beast in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I joke that I feel like I'm not so much the cheap suit, but I'm the suit that gets passed around TSS. But in saying that, I don't mind it because you see what's going on everywhere in the school.
You get good perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So then you picked up a couple of different jobs. You also picked up Holly. You got married. What year did you get married?
2014.
Don't you dare
forget
that. Don't you dare. So you see her coaching, you stalk her for a while, you fall in love. She's got 3 kids.
3 kids, So I'm fortunate to have 3 kids. So I've got 2 boys and a girl.
Yeah.
And they're at TSS and St Hilda's. Mac left TSS in year 10, went to All Saints. And Hope was, she's a firecracker. So she finished in 2002, I think, off the top of my head. She was captain of boats, but she was also in the crew of the first aid at St Hilda's that won the Head of the River. So they've only got, to my knowledge, they've only got one Head of the River. Okay. And Hope was in that boat and captain of the boats that year. And then Zach, our youngest, or Hole's youngest, he graduated year 2020. Zach, being the youngest, he wanted to do everything that his brother and sister did, but better. So Zach, he missed out in rowing in year 8 because we only took 40 rowers in that stage. And I found some footage of him rowing, and I can see why he missed out. But ultimately, he came back to rowing the next year, got into the year 9, 8th quad, worked his way in year 10, moved up, and then eventually in year 12, he stroked the 8, and they just lost by a bow ball at the Head of the River. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't have my own kids, but I'm incredibly proud of those 3 kids.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
been a real dad to them. So, Granddad used to wear your rep blazer as a gown around the house. Did you hand that down? Your rep blazer?
No, I mean I would have, but my rep blazer is not that I was overweight. I think at school because I was trying to break 100 kilos. I remember playing rugby, but I couldn't get past 98. But yeah, it was just my blazer's still in the wardrobe at home.
Blazer.
Yeah, so myself and I remember at the time myself and Phil Witten, what's his name, Les in the store had to get some custom made blazers come in. Of course they did. For Phil and I. So
probably the average size blazer these days. Some of these kids.
My blazer wouldn't be big enough for some of the kids we've got here at the moment. So
big units. All right. So life's going swimmingly well. Late 2000, I'm going to say getting close to pre-COVID. Married to Hold, kids are going well, and then life throws you another punch in the face. Get a tumour.
Yeah. So where do I start with that? So Hold kept on telling me that I wasn't listening to him. And I was like, I am listening to you. Anyway, I went over, had a lunch break here at school, went over to Southall Park because I forgot my lunch. Yeah. Because I just wanted sushi for lunch. Yeah. But got some sushi. And as I was rolling back to come to work, I saw the Bay Audio was empty. Like normally it's quite a busy place with the elderly getting their hearing aids checked and whatnot. Anyway, there was a lady at the front spruiking hearing tests. And she, as I rolled past, she goes, "Oh, would you like a hearing test?" I go, "Actually, you know what? I would like one," because I told her exactly why I wanted it. I said, "My wife says I'm not listening to her, but I'll get a piece of paper from you to say, hearing's fine, leave me alone. I'm good." Anyway, and she said, "Yep, come in." So I sat at the little machine, put on the headphones, and they give you I've never done one before, but they give you the handle and you push the button when you hear the audible tone. Anyway, they started with my right ear and I could hear the tone. I'm killing it. I just kept pressing the button. And anyway, I finished all of the right side and then moved over to my left ear and started again. And I was pushing the button. I could hear the tones, but as the tones got softer, I couldn't hear anything. I was like, I should have heard something by now. I just pushed it. And then I could hear nothing. And then the lady said, "Oh, can you not hear anything anymore?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Okay, that's the end of the test." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So she got the printout and she said, I don't read this, but you have to come back and see the audiologist. So I did. And the audiologist goes, "Yep, you've got some hearing loss in your left ear. But we can remedy that with a hearing aid." So, because he just wanted to spruik some hearing aids. So he put the hearing aids in. We went for a walk around the shops and they helped. Anyway, we got back to the Bay Audio and he said, "Yeah, look, this is your report, but for your age, you've got some significant hearing loss here. I suggest you go to your GP." So with that, I gave Doc Yelland a call, who's our school GP here. He's been my GP since I came here in 94. And saw Steve and I showed him the printout of the report and he goes, "Yeah, Dan, there's something going on here. I need you to go and see an ENT." I'm like, "Oh, here we go." Anyway, he goes, "Oh, you know what? I'll give Brett Wagner a call. He's a TSS old boy." And I heard the name.
He's a dad here now.
Yeah. So his son came from Saints, I think.
Somerset. Shout out.
Yeah, no, true. But yeah, so I've gone, okay. Anyway, sitting in Steve's office, Doc Yellen's office, and he called up Brett's rooms and he goes, "Oh, I've got a young guy here I would like to have Brett see." And she goes, "Oh, sorry, he's got a waiting list of 8 to 10 months. And Steve goes, and I was on it was on speaker. Yeah. So I heard that and I'm going, "Oh, here we go. It's going to take forever. I'm not going to see anyone." And then Steve goes, "Oh, would you mind having a chat to Brett because Dan is a TSS old boy. Maybe he might be able to just put him on a waiting list." And anyway, the lady didn't even go back to Brett and she goes, "Oh, if he's a TSS old boy, come in tomorrow morning, quarter to 8, and Brett will see you then." And I was blown away that he would take time out of his own personal life to come in early to work to see me. But sure enough, I turned up good weight, and he saw me, and he looked at the report and he said, "Yeah, Dan, this does." And he's a softly spoken guy.
It's humble.
And he goes, "Yeah, this just doesn't look right, Dan. I need you to go and have an MRI." And things were starting to get a bit serious. I thought, what's going on here? Anyway, I had the MRI and came back to work. And then I got a phone call that afternoon. It was from Brett. He said, "Yeah, I've got your results here. I need you to come in and see me." I've gone, "All right, can I swear?"
Please.
I said, "Don't beat around the bush. Just tell me straight. I don't care what it is. Just tell me it sure as shit ain't cancer." He said, "No, it's not cancer." Gone, "Brilliant. Well, I'll come in and see you tomorrow." Anyway, I got in there the next morning and he showed me the image, and all I saw was just this white mass in the middle of my head. And I thought, far out. And he said, "Yeah, it's pretty big." And I said, "So how big is it?" And he said, "Roughly about the size of a golf ball."
It's a benign tumour.
So yeah, so it's what's known as a acoustic neuroma.
Right.
So it's a tumour, but the tumour had encapsulated my cochlear nerve on my left side. So he said that we can certainly treat it. He said he said there's three things that could happen. And he said, unfortunately, two of them are out for you from the get-go. And I said, "Okay, well, what are they?" And he said, "Well, the first is to leave it and we see what happens. But we only leave it when it's smaller, because if it does grow, then we can treat it. And to treat it is one of two ways. The first is radiation. But unfortunately, yours is already too big, because when you treat it with radiation, it expands and then it starts to shrink. If yours expands any more, you're going to have some serious problems." Because he said, "I'm surprised you haven't got problems already with the size that it is." So he said, "Unfortunately for you, you're just left with surgery. But it's surgery that can happen." So with that, he made the calls to the doctor here on the coast. I forget the gentleman's name. He was a South African guy, and he was blunt, as a lot of South Africans are. But yeah, went to the appointment with Hull, and it was a car crash of an appointment, and basically we walked away, essentially him saying, "Get your affairs in order." He said it would be a 12 to 14 hour surgery. There'd probably be 10 to 12 people involved in the surgery. Yeah, it was an absolute mess. And fortunately, and again, it goes back to who you know. Fortunately, my sister-in-law, so Hol's one of five children. So her and all of her family is in the services, whether it's police, fire, nursing. So her sister Anna called up, and she could hear Hole crying in the background as Anna was talking to me. And I went through with Anna what the doctor had said, and she goes, "You know what?" And she was the head of nursing at the Mater. She said, "You know what? We've got a really good team here at the Mater, at the BCNC, I think it's called, basically their brain area." She said, "Let me go and have a chat to the team down there, and I'll see what I can do." I've gone, "Okay, not a problem." Not expecting anything at all in the world. Anyway, maybe an hour later, Anna called me back and she said, "What are you doing?" And she was in the offices down with the brain guys. And she goes, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I have work, but not much." And she goes, "Well, Dr. by the name of Dr. Woods, I know him really well. He's offered to or for you to come up and you see him again, 4 to 8 in the morning." Yeah. But okay, not a problem. So sure enough, Hol and I went up there. Not only did Dr. Wood have a ridiculously long wait line, but unbeknownst to me, Dr. Wood is a Gregory Terrace old boy parent within the GPS system. And he said, "Yep, we can do this surgery." Painted a completely different picture. So, so we had the surgery, and the surgery was going to be, and he said it'll be a 9-hour surgery, and you'll be in hospital for 8 to 10 days, and hopefully everything will be fine and good to go. I'm going, "Okay, brilliant." So we did the surgery, and I just had complications with an infection they just could not get on top of. And obviously, before a surgery like that, you meet your team that's going to look after you. And my ENT, guy by the name of Dr. Bowman, he came to us maybe 2 or 3 days after the initial surgery, and they just couldn't get a hold of the infection and trying to settle it down, and it was just doing all sorts of different things up there. And he said, "Look, I need to get a plastic surgeon involved because it's just the technicality of what needs to be done to fix your wound at the moment. I can't do, so I need to get someone else in." So I had no idea who was going to. And I said, and we obviously knew the Late family down here on the coast. And I remember Hole reaching out to Tina, and Craig was more than happy to get involved if we wanted him to. But we waited to see who Dr. Bowman would get, and then we'd come back and have a chat to Craig if we needed to, or if we didn't feel comfortable. So the next day, it was about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, just sitting in the room or laying in the bed in the room up at the Marta, and in comes this plastic surgeon, all dressed in black, like black scrubs. Anyway, as he walked into the room, I thought, geez, I know your face. And he looked at me, he goes, I know your face. Anyway, he got to talking about what he needed to do, and he'd heard what Dr. Bowman had told him. And I just said to him, I said, mate, did you go to TSS? He said, yeah. I said, I thought your face was familiar. I said, when did you finish? He said, 99. I said, you did not. He said, when did you finish? I said, 2000. He said, yeah, I recognise your face as well. Anyway, it was Theo Birch.
Yeah, wow.
So, and not maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks earlier, he was the first surgeon to successfully reconnect a hand back onto an arm from a workplace incident. So with the Googling that we did after he left, and we knew we were in safe hands, and again, being an old boy, he ended up having to do, unfortunately, 11 different surgeries on my head just to get it back to being together without an infection.
So the infection was on the outside or inside?
No, it was inside. So it was deep between my brain and the skull. But the problem was that, like clockwork, I'd go in to have surgery to get rid of the dead tissue. I'd be on antibiotics in the hospital for the 6 weeks while that was healing, and on antibiotics that whole time. They'd discharge me, and then, like clockwork, 8 weeks after, all of a sudden the stitch would let go and I was infected again. So, after the 12th surgery, he actually said to me that before we did the surgery, number 12, he said, look, Dan, if this doesn't work, the only viable and reliable blood source I've got, or vein I've got, is the vein that supplies the blood to your ear. So I have to take your ear to have a reliable source. I'm going, holy smokes, this has to work.
Yeah.
So, and fortunately it did, touch wood. So,
so you got a bit of good luck in amongst a fair bit of bad luck.
I did.
Right surgeon. So a couple of major incidents in your life, two big incidents. You've always been so positive. You've always turned up to work when as soon as you're fit and able. Where's that come from? Is that innate? I know you would have had some pretty dark days, but you always show up. You never let excuses get in the way. You just get the job done. Is that something you've always been born with? Did mum and dad do it? Is it just something you've learned over time?
I think seeing what my mum and dad did when Ben and I were growing up to send us here, like they obviously worked incredibly hard, as all parents do that send their kids here. But that would be the first thing that I'd say was the work ethic. But the other thing, and no one makes me feel like this, but sometimes I think when you have not so much a disability, but when you feel like you need to prove yourself. Not that I've ever been made to feel like I've got to prove myself in this place to keep my job, but you just want to show that you can do it, or you might want to, what's the right word? Not that I want to shock anyone that I can do it, but some people do get shocked. They're going, oh, you've got that done already, sort of thing. So I think that's the second part to it. But definitely my folk, growing up watching my folks work hard, and my old man always said that I don't want you to be a mechanic. So, because seeing him in some of the sitting in car, like in engine bays, lifting engines out and stuff like that, I was like, this ain't for me. So, I'd say they're the two things that make me do what I do.
Definitely. And Brian Hayner got a good relationship. He's been very good to
He has. So Haney has been. So I've obviously got my biological mum and dad.
you. Yeah.
I've always said that my second mum and dad is Mike and Marg Halpin, who are my housemaster and his wife, and their kids, the two girls, Christy and Beck, who I'm still friends with. But yeah, Brian and Debs are just I treat them like my parents as well. So Haney was at my wedding. Haney's been at everything that's connected with me and my family. Um, I can still remember when he turned up here in '96, 97, sorry, and he got up on stage and he called Wagga 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 Wagga.
Mm.
And I still remind him of it
He's
to this
British,
day.
by the way.
Yeah.
For those listening. Wouldn't have had a Wagga Wagga before.
So, but yeah, it's quite interesting, and I find it. And it was just the other day that he had to do a rowing speech. He had to speak at assembly.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he spoke well.
And he came and said to me, "Look, what do I talk about?" And he's definitely got some story, and he's one obviously to be on this podcast because he's been here, and sport's got epic stories out of this place. But sometimes there's some things that happen in this place that you just forget about and need someone else to prompt you. And that's what happened in my office the other day. He just came down, sat in the chair, and we just got talking about different things with rowing. And he wanted to make a connection between rowing history and what's happening in the past in rowing to try and make it connect with our current first eight. And that's where the connection with Mitch Campbell being in the boat 3 years and Leo Hughes being in the boat 3 years. And then I told him or I reminded him, about Phil Whitten. And he remembered Phil at the start of the year because his son's here at school now. But Phil actually ran into Brian first after the induction assembly. And Phil walked straight up to him. And Phil was the same as me. He's 6'4". He's a big unit. And just tapped Haney on the shoulder and said, "Oh, do you remember me?" And Brian, he remembers everyone.
Yeah, he does. He's good.
He said, "Yeah, I do." And then he said, "Oh, do you know where Dino's office is?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll take you there." So he walked him down from the theatre. But yeah, reminding Brian of his story of making the first eight. And now there's that connection with his son Harry being in Rogers. And that's the other scary part is the fact that we're getting older.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would have experienced when you started teaching, but you're teaching your mates' kids.
Yeah.
And for me now, I'm seeing injury reports of my mates' kids. I'm like, far out. It just blows your mind.
Yeah. One of the boys I taught one of my first few years is just his wife's pregnant with their fifth child, so that makes me feel very old. Someone I taught is having their fifth. So I'm going to ask you in a moment advice for students. Before we do that, you and your brother got into the drones.
Yep.
So you're still doing that? That was the surf life saving. So the technology's evolved somewhat, but you guys kind of founded that space, the drone technology in the surf.
Yeah. So we hooked up. My brother and I got into drones, and Ben was flying for Carefly at the time as an air crewman. But so we found drones and we got connected with Little Ripper and putting drones on beaches for surf life saving, shark spotting, things like that. And we did that for a couple of years, and it was great. Like we effectively did the first rescue with a drone down at Lennox Head.
So dropping the surf life saving equipment.
Yeah, so it was basically a small package that had an inflatable tube with a device. When it made contact with water, it would blow up into a safety sausage. There was 2 kids bodyboarding out off Lennox Head. Ben was there at the time. They were training up the volunteer lifeguards on how to use the drones and do the rest of basically scanning the beach for sharks and whatnot. Anyway, they just got a call about one of the girlfriends, the boys ran up to them and said, "Oh, my boyfriend's being taken out." So they had the drone up in the air and they flew over, dropped the device, and it basically gave them, because they lost their board. Both lost their boards. It was some pretty big surf at the time, and they were just floundering in the water. And And sure enough, they got the drone right over the top, and it basically almost hit them on the top of their head and made contact with the water. It blew up, and they could get themselves back into shore. But yeah, Ben left. Well, I was doing it part time around my work here at TSS, but Ben was doing it full time. He left them and went out, and he's now got a business called Fly the Farm. So he's moved into the agriculture space, which
Okay.
is just phenomenal. But yeah, the drones, like we were playing with small, they almost look like kids' toys
Yeah.
compared to what Ben's using now.
Big
But
commercial drones.
yeah, massive big ag drones that spray. They carry 100 liters of chemical for spraying, or 100 liters of fertilizer for spreading. And he does that all over Australia.
Yeah.
So whether it's teaching people to fly and selling them or doing it for them, I still go out and help him where I can. But yeah, to fly those things, it's just like a big dinner plate
Yeah.
up in the sky. So
We
yeah,
got a mum here, pharmacist out in Gundy. She's the first pharmacist to have medication dropped off
oh
by
really?
a drone, so they can get up to 100 k's from the centre of town, which is amazing
Yeah,
technology
wow.
these days. And your surf lifesaving can have as many drones in the air as they possibly can, as far as I'm concerned. Spotting sharks as a surfer, I'm very happy to see drones floating around,
Sure.
letting us know when there's men in grey suits. So you've lived a pretty eventful life, Dan. You're quite lucky to come out of the diving incident. They definitely, there's days there the doctor said it could have gone either way. So you've come through that with a massive amount of adversity. Then you've talked us through your infection. It just seemed to just be relentless. What was a very complicated operation. I don't think anyone prepared for the infection afterwards. So in amongst the two really big ticket items in your life, you've met Holly. So there's been the best and worst in life, in the life of Dan Trollope. When you look back on all that, and you pointed to me and looked at me when you said getting old too. So I'm pretty offended by that. But we are growing older. You get a bit more reflective when you've experienced a bit. What's your message to the current crop of TSS boys and parents around life and what life can throw at you?
I guess my message I try to say to the boys all the time is like appreciate what you've got right now. As you said earlier, your time at TSS goes incredibly quickly, and unfortunately for a lot of our boys, and I was the same. So I'm not trying to say I wasn't, but I couldn't get out of here quick enough. And purely because I thought there was bigger and better things to come, but those things are going to come regardless.
Yeah.
But enjoying your time and getting out of this place, what it can give you is just incredible. And I'm sure Miss Gable won't like me saying this, but yes, TSS is brilliant at academics and sport and everything that we give you at this school, but being an old boy of this place and the contacts and the connections that you have for the rest of your life, if you do the right thing in terms of setting yourself up to learn and listen now, there'll be that many doors and that many people that will be willing to help you that have gone there and done it before. And there's a lot of I don't want to say influential old boys, but I haven't got anything else right now. But there's anything that you want to do in life, you can bet your bottom dollar there's an old boy that's currently doing it. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to open that door to let you try before you buy, so to speak. And as for parents, I tread carefully here because every parent has got their own way of doing things. So I'm trying to be very respectful of that. But at the end of the day, just let your kids do what they want to do within reason, but they're going to make mistakes. And I think, and they might not choose the path you want them to go on, but the product, as in the student you're going to get once they leave here, is going to be a bloody good kid. And I think I can honestly say, I think if my mum and dad were sitting here, I would think that they're incredibly grateful and happy with the two boys that or two young men,
Yeah.
they got out of TSS when Ben and I both left here. Yeah.
Sure, that agree. My kids said you have to interview Dan Trollope because TSS just has this currency of if you're a good bloke, it will just take you so far in life, and you don't have to be the smartest, as you said, or the best player. You don't have to be the surgeon that's research at a hand. You don't have to be the Brent McMonagals of this world who are literally changing the world. He's doing the olfactory nerve cells in the Griffith University and the Pericross Foundation study. So he's literally changing the world, but he's a great bloke, a good bloke, and that currency just gets you so far in life. You're one of life's good blokes. We champion good men here, and that's why I think my kids were so keen to make sure you were interviewed because you're just a good human. And I look at the likes of Bo McKelvey coming here, our first student in a while that rides a wheelchair. You were the first person to reach out saying, give me his parents' number. I'll reach out and, whatever you could do to help to make their onboarding process, his enrolment here as seamless as possible without painting a picture of unicorns and rainbows. You're such a realist and you know that life will throw challenges, but I just love the way you've just overcome adversity and you just keep showing up. And so just by being you're such a great message to the young kids. So thanks for being sensitive with the question about parents. We all do it differently. No one does it perfectly, but you are one of life's good guys. And I'm so glad you agreed to do this. And it's great to hear a bit of your story. And thanks for being one of the good men that we try to champion in our world.
No worries. Thank
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen,
Cheers.
Dan,
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers. It's amazing how long we can chat for. Hey, that's awesome.